So this video is about getting Selenium working in Python, and one of the things that I was doing, or at least when I did a live cast, I was trying to get Selenium working, and it wasn't working in the original version, which used to work until about until about 6 months ago, basically until the mid 2023. And what I'm referring to is if I go over to, we'll actually just look at the last live cast that was done. But if I go over to here, there's these little snippets, and you can do import WebDriver, and then there's like a little cheat here which you could have done, but actually I'm going to show that this is not necessary. But there was all of these different things that I browsed around, so like the best way to install Selenium, and actually like a lot of them are saying do this Chrome driver _ binary, but it turns out that that's not even needed. You could do the original Selenium. Now in the original Selenium, which is this one, I think if I scroll down somewhere again, we get this boilerplate code over here. And if I zoom into it, kind of like all you have to do is kind of like copy this code and then paste it into your browser, and it should actually work. And the reason why it doesn't work is somewhere in this WebDriver where it creates it. I don't use Firefox, but I use Chrome, so it's Chrome, and I need to use Chrome driver. There's one extra handle that you have to add in, and that stopped working. So it was working, and then it stopped working in Python. So kind of like I've had to do a little muck around to discover how to get it working. And actually, finally, I did actually find it on a YouTube video, I believe, or I mashed it together between a YouTube video and some of the documentation. But basically, this is how to get Selenium working. So the first thing is you need to import Selenium, import WebDriver from Selenium. So from Selenium, import WebDriver. The next part is to do this, which is from selenium.webdriver.chrome.service import service. So we've got a new class here, service, and then we do our Chrome driver manager, and then we do all of the other pieces that we need from Selenium. So like these are all our Selenium pieces, and then here are our other imports, or I could call them the built-in imports actually, built-in modules. There you go. Right, so that's our Selenium modules. Right, so that's Selenium 4, and that's all of the built-in modules. Now, notice here that this is a WebDriver manager, so it's not Selenium, and that's where we get the Chrome driver from. Now, I do show this two ways. It doesn't matter which way you do it, and this is something to do with the difference between functional programming and object-oriented programming, and that just depends on how you want to construct your code. So initially I constructed it using functions, and then I just kind of like thought, well, maybe I'll do I'll put all of the stuff into a class. And the reason why is when you create it with functions, or at least when I created it with functions, and I should really go through it because that's actually the easiest or the most intuitive way to do it. I actually create a function here which is Chrome driver, and then if I hover over, we see that it would return something back, which is this WebDriver. And then in order to do to get something out of get the URL, I have to pass this. If I want to do it functionally, I would be passing this driver argument back into the new function with whatever I had to do. And I had to do I didn't have to, but you should type hint for that, because then you can get all of the methods that are available. So I can sort of like get the driver dots, and then all of the drop down methods are available from using the dots. And so that's quite handy because it makes sure that you don't get things wrong. But basically that would expose all of the rest of the code. Now, both were easy, but the reality is this class, this Chrome driver class, it does pretty much the same thing. So here I've got this make Chrome driver work, and notice that literally I've taken that code out of this make Chrome driver work here. So that's more about controlled flow. So there are two choices of this, and if anyone does send a request or whatever, I can actually share this code anyway. But to get this working in the newest version, or in the latest version of Selenium, we had to do these 4 imports. So maybe actually, I wonder if I should move this one up because this is like a Selenium import over here. So the question is does it go over there? Because the WebDriver one's slightly separate. But I'll leave them commingled because actually, really, in order to get Selenium working, the first part of it, you actually do need the Chrome Driver Manager. So these are the 4 imports are needed. Specifically WebDriver, that comes from Selenium, service that comes from Selenium WebDriver Chrome Service, the Chrome Driver Manager, which comes from the WebDriver Manager. The WebDriver Manager is installed with the pip install WebDriver Manager, and Selenium is installed with pip install Selenium. So there's 2 different installations there. There are 2 different pip installations that are required. Let's just get the terminal going there. Okay, let's hit clear on there as well. Clear. Right, so let's just focus on, I've also imported the time module and the OS module, but they didn't need to be imported. But I just did something extra on there. But let's just go through and see what happens. We have then at the right at the bottom, we've got our normal, or what I have is my standard template, the name _name equals _main guard idiom over there, which then calls the main function. So I can go to definition, which is quite nice and cute because if I go to definition, it's right at the top, so main function. And the first thing it does is it runs this little function that I created here, and all of these functions now, so the main function sits at the top and everything else sits somewhere else down below in the rest of the module, in places that we want to put it. So go to definition. The first thing that we do is we want to make Chrome Driver working, and this is a key part of it. This is the most important bit, which is this version equals and then something, because that's what was failing, and that's what's failing to be shown on all of the documentation, funnily enough. So when you come to copy all of this stuff, it just doesn't work. And when you select search around the error messages, they give you all of these different things, but again, they still don't work. So they give you all of, this is Stack Overflow, someone's version of doing it. I had a few other ones, I guess. I wonder if I can navigate to it and find it somewhere, but it's all a boilerplate code. None of them seem to put that in there, but it does kind of like reference it somewhere. But anyway, on the referencing, I have got it linked here, which is I think if I can hover over it, let's open up the link here. We need this. We at least need one of these to drive an instance of the Chrome driver, and previously that was left blank, and you would have thought actually if it was left blank that you'd get like the latest version or something like that. So maybe there is like a latest keyword in there, but I actually had to put in a version of Chrome driver to get it working. So if there is a latest version, so if this could be, for example, if this could be like set to none, then you could have like a latest version in here rather than actually having the number. But nevertheless, that's where we get it from, and that will get a version of Chrome working. So we create our function, and it takes in this version number. This version number is a string over here, and then we just do service, and then we can just do this in the same way as normal. Now the documentation, how it used to look, or the code that I used to run before was exactly like this. And then all of a sudden in 2023 it broke, so it stopped working. So this was working before, and the line number 93, this was working before, but now this is the current version that makes it work. And I don't know if you can put in sort of like a version equals and then kind of like a none or something like that in there. I wonder if I hover over Chrome Driver Manager, if it's got something in there, version string. It actually defaults to none. Well, it's got a string and none, but it defaults to none. But yeah, I mean, the documentation just wasn't great. So that's really the piece that I'm actually pointing out, because everything outside of that actually works in the documentation. So we create this service from here. If we hover over it, class service, a service class is responsible for starting and stopping the Chrome driver. So we're starting the Chrome driver, we need to start it in a certain version, and we need to install it. So that's our service. And then we can do driver equals webdriver.chrome. So that's our actual web driver, and what actually comes back is this driver object, which is of type if I hover over it and get there, it's of type WebDriver over here. We can see that in the little pop-up when we hover over it. So that's good. We can ignore these other bits because this other bit's actually part was broken, so I just stuck all of my broken legacy code in here. But after that, the next piece of code that I wanted to get, and I did have this initially inside of here, which was our example inside of the main, but I thought I'd split it out into two sections, because one is getting the Chrome driver to work. Well, that's kind of like a function in itself now, because if it keeps breaking, or if you need to keep updating the versions, we don't want it to affect the rest of the code. Like I want it to break in here so I can isolate it quickly. So now it's modularized. So whether we've done it in functional programming or in functions in the object-oriented programming, so whether we've done it here or here, one way or another, we needed to make sure that it was done. Now the only difference is that here the version is it's an attribute of the, or it's a class attribute. So version itself, version is assigned to version, and then it passes through everywhere. Whereas if we do it in the functional programming, we have to make sure that we pass the version across into the, pass the driver across into the next bit. So up here somewhere, when we create the driver, we just put it in it's self.driver. So it's an attribute of the actual class itself. It's an attribute of the, it's an instance of the class, an instance attribute of the class. So here we don't do that, so we need to make sure that we explicitly pass it back in. We could have used a global, but never used it, or try to avoid global, because the global keyword kind of like pollutes the namespace, and it's deemed to be bad practice. So if, in my view, if you're going to use global, then you're better off jumping over. It's probably already a hint that you should probably be using classes, going the object-oriented way, and the alternative way is to stick with functional and make sure you pass it back in. But anyway, we do that. So we take in our driver, and then the other part that we want to do is take in the URL here, and that's pretty much it. Now, in our functional program, actually, where we've got it over here, if I did, so this is doing the functional version, and then afterwards it's using classes. You can, I don't know which one's better, which one's not. For small pieces of code, they look identical. It depends on how you're actually going to use your code. But over here, I've actually got driver get URL, and then we put in a URL that goes into here. I could have set here the driver. I wonder in the get URL function to actually instantly call the make Chrome driver. So actually make this. I could have done that as an alternative, which was down in here, make Chrome driver work. No, because that would still need to return a driver. Well, we'd have needed to have called it from here. So it's more logical to pass it into the code from here. So anyway, we pass in the driver and the URL. So just jumping back to the part of the code where it works, we just go to, sometimes when I go to definition, it goes there, but go to references is the right way to do it. I'll scroll there faster. I'm going to beat it anyway. But our get URL is over here anyway, because I've gone to the reference myself before it got there. Get URL, if I hover over it now, it needs the driver, which is the web driver, and then it needs the URL. The URL. You know what I actually might do it is the URL has got to be a string. So I'm going to do some type hinting now. So, right, and over here we're going to put a doc string in, so it's nice and clean, which is given a driver. Funnily enough, again, it's kind of like from here, which is, okay, well, it just opens up a web page actually, but I'm going to put opens a web page given a driver. Open a web page given a driver. And over here we've got our args, and our args are driver, which is the web driver Chrome. From here, it's the, I guess, what should I call this here? well, it's actually the web. I guess it's the web driver itself. I'll call it the web driver, the Chrome instance, and here the URL is string. I could put this in. I stopped doing the type hints like this, but only because it's in the signature itself anyway. So we now know, and somebody mentioned when I did do that, like, what's the best way of doing it? They were like, well, either you put the type hinting or the type in the actual arguments, or you put the type in the signature, but surely you don't do both because you're duplicating. Now, I don't know if that's drawn up. There's things that auto create documents, but I'll leave it out. But URL is the URL that we want to retrieve. So something like this, and here it doesn't do anything. So returns doesn't actually return anything. So none at the moment. It just opens a web page given the driver. So in fact, I should put returns if I on the next line. So like that. There we go. So that's our argument, and that's our driver, and that's our URL. But I'm just thinking from I just make Chrome driver. I wonder if that's too verbose. There we go. WebDriver Chrome instance that was created. I don't know if that's right, wording for it, but it's at least something to describe it. Well, actually, we know that it's of type 5. I think that should be fine. I'll leave it like that. So now, at least when we're over here on this one, it's our URL, and we're saying that it's actually a string. But just to be a bit kind of like better on this, I'm actually going to take this URL here. So I will cut this one out. And I will pass it into here, because now instead of just saying it's a string, we're actually giving it a default value, and now it's automatically of type string. So that will kind of like get it. I don't know if it's maybe that's uglier. So Z, there we go. Z, one more. I'll keep it like this. So we've got two different options of it, because here we'll actually pass it back in as, if I hover over it correctly, try it multiple times. Over here, I actually pass this URL in it and give it a, and if you do that, then you initialize it. So you give it a default value, so that you don't if you don't put anything in, it automatically defaults to something. Here I've actually specified that I want to see a particular URL go in there, and I could actually check if URL is none, for example, down below. So I could, there's loads of things that you could do, but I could put like if URL, oops, over here. Well, we know that it's not of type none. So, but I could do if URL equals none, right? Then sort of like return, right, straight away. It is broken. So like it is broken. Now we don't need to do that, just for the purpose of the example of getting it working, but everything should now work seamlessly, just from these two. And the example with the classes is basically exactly the same, apart from that. So we make our class, and then we do an initialization, and in the initialization, I say, hey, you need to pass in this this version that we need to make it work, and I've kind of like given it the default version. And over here, I've passed in, you can see here actually, so I've like alternated with the variety of the various different ways that we can do it. In our functional version, I've actually made the version here, and a default value for it. So you can chop and choose how you want to do it. So and then down here I've made it a default value in the actual initialization. So when you call a Chrome driver, it initially does it too actually. So then both of them is kind of the default value. And the reason why is because it's actually needed. So and I just wonder here. Yeah, it does also, it takes you to the downloads page just in case, like, after a year or two. And I could do sort of like a year's check or every 6 months. And so like prompt the user to go back and update it. Because one thing that we do see is if I open over there, I probably opened it a second time, doesn't matter. But these versions seem to come out quite frequently. So we're on 100 and whatever, but when I ran this code like a year or two ago, and it was on like year number, it was on number 80, something version number 80. So it's gone, a good 20, 25 versions since then. And I don't know if I see a date on or if these things actually refer to dates anyway. Please see the release notes, but yeah, here we go, 2023-05, that's the one release there. If I click on another one, so that's the one before that, 0504. This is version 13. Is that just the day before? I don't know, like if it's dates, but there's like lots of releases coming out. So like you'll become legacy. I don't know, reasonably soon. So you kind of do need to check on that. I don't know, temporally. So like I don't know, maybe put some code in there to check on the times. And that's basically it. Now I'll comment one of these out for now because I guess we don't need both of them running. But we're going to make this Chrome driver work as per the function. So we're going to open a web page. So over here, on this one here, we're going to open a web page. In fact, we're not going to open a web page on this one. We're going to actually get the Chrome driver working. So let me just do that. Which is copy this. Again, you can see me sort of like copying the doc strings because they are pretty similar. That open up a web page actually belongs over here. So now I'm sort of modifying the code, but basically we want to make Chrome driver work given a version. So that's actually what we want to do. And I could say the default version is, get rid of that comment there, and I could say the default version is this, but it's kind of like already said, as in over here, args. In fact, maybe I will put it in there. Args, which is version, which is a version of the Chrome driver. See notes, there we go, and then return RETURN. If we spell it correctly, return what we actually going to get back from our function here. We are going to get back this the web driver that was created given the version. Right, there we go. So that's what's going to come back. So now it's documented. I'll control S on that to save. It's actually documented a little bit better. So now make Chrome driver work given a version. We're told what the arguments are. I didn't put in that the argument is a string. So here I could have put version, which is a string, but I didn't bother putting it in here because it's in the function signature anyway. And then what gets returned back, which is WebDriver. Again, that's in the function signature, so we know we get that back. But it's the WebDriver that was created given the specific version. So that throws that back into this driver argument. And then from our get URL, we're going to open up a web page given a driver. Well, we've got our driver from above because we had to make a Chrome driver, and I could have like copied this here and to like passed it into here, just like that. So, and that would have made this line obsolete, but won't do that. We'll keep it explicit, so we keep them broken up into their sections. And just to not launch it twice, I will Control// this one out for a second, and we can now run our code and see if it works or doesn't work. So I'll close the sidebar up because that's not needed. And it's taking its time and doing its stuff, and here we go. It has launched the actual, and then it unlaunches it after 3 seconds, because part of this URL thing, if I go to it, so go to definition, is I just make it run for 3 seconds, but what I'll do is I'll make it run for 30 seconds. There is ways of keeping it open and so forth, but because this is just an example, it's good enough to keep it running just for I'll make it 60 seconds. I'm not having enough time to talk about it, but oops. Hit clear it over here, just so it's over there, so we can see it running, and then hit F5 to run the code again, and it opens up the only reason why is because I wanted to kind of like resize it and so forth, but basically it opens up a version of Chrome, and it's gone and captured this solar system piece in here, and that's actually, I think that was the the URL or the base example. So let's just go to it over here if I'm quick enough, because it will close down. This get URL, yeah, here we go, space glue, whatever. So it goes there and it's going to run. It's going to get it for 60 seconds, and then really what we want to do with that afterwards is kind of like, can we get the data? Let's take some data from there, like get this, get the number of planets or frames per second or whatever it was. So whatever we wanted to measure, can we get that down with the Chrome driver by going here and looking at the inspect object if we can, and then it's like looking at the X path of it. It's finally disappeared. That's fine, but that was basically it. So, but we've had a graceful exit and it works. So that's Selenium WebDriver for in late 2023. It works now with the modifications, and the modification that we had to put was to have this version in here, whether we do it in a function, so whether we do it in a class or whether we do it functionally. So the Chrome driver here, we had to have a version number that went in there that fed into our Chrome driver manager in order to get it working. So that's basically it. That's Selenium. And if you like this, then hit the like button, hit the follow button, subscribe button, and any other button that you could possibly hit apart from the thumbs down button. And yeah, if there's any comments or anything that you've got to add on to that, if you know a way of mitigating the fact that you don't need to put in a version number, that would be useful. Definitely stick that in the comments. And that's it. That's Selenium.